Hello students, welcome to week 4. I can't believe it's already the end of semester almost here. We only got a few weeks left. Please reach out to me, by the way, with anything on the final exam. I know I've issued all your information early on. You've all got your assigned companies, and if there's any questions on anything, certainly reach out to me as we're nearing the semester here, because hey, we're in week 4 now, and we've only got a few weeks left here to go. By the way, this is also midterm week, and make sure that you've purchased your case studies. If you have any issues with that, please let me know. I'd be happy to help you wherever I can. The midterm will be updated, will be uploaded this probably in the next couple of hours, so it's somewhere around 12:30 here on Monday, the 10th of February. Well, now I think at this point you're getting a little bit better understanding of the business world. Last week we were going to do just different forms of business, why you select one over another. And you can see in some of the situations there, the discussions that we've had, that some companies, start off as one type of a company and then move to something else as they grow and expand. And we talked about ethics and social responsibility, ethics being a big deal, things that go on. We talked about potential stealing of employee stealing and things like that, and how you would handle that. That happens quite frequently, unfortunately, for many companies, and certainly social responsibility. Companies want to be good corporate citizens. So now we move into this week, which is Chapter 7, a little bit related to the product design and development. And this course, of course, there's an operations management course, as I've mentioned to you folks before, that talks a lot more detail about things like product design and development and quality and things like that. So we're only really touching the surface of some of these topics. In fact, I've spent a greater part of my career in product development. I actually started there working with the engineering teams that basically would take something from a paper document, a conceptual paper document, ultimately to a tangible product that we would deliver to the marketplace. And so we looked at a lot of things like target market, pricing, servicing it, warranting it, and all the things that are attributable to product design and development. And so what is a product? And the textbook does a pretty good job of simply saying that a product is it's something tangible. Defines a product as a good that's tangible, or a service something that's intangible. Service meaning more of like a process, pretty much, versus, like I said, something that's end result, like an iPhone or a car or something like that. But a product could be both, and we'll talk a little bit about that. I'll get into that example. So if you're a car manufacturer, you're a product developer. So tangibly, you produce cars, trucks, or whatever have you, something tangible. When you buy a car, you work through a dealership who's an extension typically of a car manufacturer. So their work is a service business, and they work to provide service, repairs to your car, accessories, different things that you may need for the lifetime of the car. And that's more of a service entity, and they get measured on how well they perform their operations and how well they service you, how quickly you're in and out, and all the conveniences they provide to keep you buying cars. And so that's an example of being both a tangible and intangible. So in order for a product to be successful, you need a target market. So you need some people, someone, a group of individuals that has a need to buy your product and can benefit from it. We talked about Tesla in some of these situations. I think, in fact, I know some of you have it for your final exam. And so the target market, so what would you say a target market for Tesla is? And some of the things that they advertise, this is on their website, is demographics, ages range from 30 to 60, upper middle class families, household incomes of $80,000 plus. So someone that has, in the cars today, originally they start off on the $100,000 range, and now I think they're down around the $35,000. It's a little bit more affordable, a bigger range. But people that are concerned about gas consumption, desire for affordability, want a luxury car, and in fact want sustainability, are concerned about emissions and what it does to the environment. And then we got on to talk a little bit about, when you get back into product development, there's 4 categories. So there's things where it's actually a new product to the company. And that's, in fact, the company I work for today, we started off with it's a patented product, but it's something brand new. Also, there's ways that you have there's developments that could be improvements to existing products, and as you can see, that happens quite frequently. Just look at the iPhone, for instance, and how many iterations of the phone, and how they enhance it and give better features and things like that. Making or having the target market say, hey, look, yes, I want a better camera, or this is the reason why I want to upgrade the existing phone, and then something that be like new to the market. And as I mentioned, I work for a small company here, and something being new to the product line, being a new product line that we're launching. And in fact, over time, we are enhancing the product line. So we're putting better features into it and changing different things, and we're adding to it. So that goes on. You may have heard of a company called WeatherTech. It's a U.S.-made product for the auto industry, car accessories, and they initially started off with floor mats, and now they're getting into things like mats for your car and covers for your seat and all the different things, and cup holders for your cell phone and things like that. So they may have natural extensions to the product line and so on and so forth. Anyone who starts a business has a certain amount of risk, and you take risk in anything. And actually, when you're into the midterm this week, you'll see with Google, the Google Glass, that there was a lot of risk taking with a product that ultimately pretty much was stalled in the marketplace. And you'll read some of that as you get into your case and things like that. So the important thing when you're introducing new products is to gather information. Try to certainly have a target market that's ahead of you of people or groups or whatever that are really going to want to buy your product. There's a benefit, there's a need, and it's affordability. And you think when Elon Musk started Tesla, did he do any research? But certainly, he must have been doing something right, because it was just on a whim, and especially when the funds it takes to start up a car company, especially in the automotive field, there's a lot of heavy capital investment that's involved there. So entrepreneurs and small business owners are a rich source of product ideas, according to the Small Business Administration, because a lot of companies just look at the show Shark Tank and think of, or you can see, if any of you watch that, it's actually a pretty good show, and you can see how many different ideas people have for different businesses, and how many of those businesses have taken off and becoming great successes. So it's real simple things, simple ideas that happen there. Ideas turn into business opportunities when it's commercial. When we have a commercial viable product, so something that somebody's going to want and need. And so the things that you want to ask yourself when you're starting up a business is, who's the customer? Why do they want to buy the product, and how will the customer benefit from the product? So what is the value they can bring? The textbook does a great job of explaining the target markets and how you segment the market and things like that. And certainly there's courses that are just in the marketing arena, if that get into great detail about all aspects of marketing your product and looking at the channels of distribution, stuff like that. So after you've identified the potential customer, your next step is finding as much as you can about the product and where it fits. While at Motorola, and this is the company I was talking to you about, that we develop products, we would actually go out, once we had the product identified, we had a target market identified, and we've got some feedback and different things. Initially you'd have what you call some prototype product, or what you call beta test product, which is product that you want to put into a real environment and test the results of that to get the feedback. And we did a lot of that. And we sat with potential customers, and we interviewed them and got ideas from them and things like that in terms of, what they would see, what kind of features and what kind of pricing. As I mentioned, we installed it before we brought it to the marketplace, just to get a feel for and tweak it to see what worked and what didn't work. So, before you make a substantial investment in a product, you've got to really understand, is there enough customers willing to buy at the price I'm willing to sell and certainly make a profit? And this is not cast in concrete. It's never a point where it's totally successful. That a lot of it is, is forecasted, is projected based on what you're reading and hearing and analyzing. So once you develop a level of sales volume, so assuming your product is ready for the marketplace, You've got to get to a point where you want to break even, meaning your costs have to be able to be fully covered before you're going to start making some profits. And that's something that you'll see, and they touch a little bit on the book. In the book, there's actually a whole section within operations management class that talks about a break-even point. And that's a point of where, you've got a volume that you're willing to be able to manufacture versus the amount customers are willing to pay for it. So it's a point where that you meet that threshold and you start making a profit. And not surprising, developing profitable products is difficult. A lot of times companies work for a long period of time to deliver product, and the whole business is basically still a nonprofit. If you look at companies like Uber, you look at look at Tesla, and for many years initially out of the gate, they haven't been profitable, and just recently now are getting to a profitability level. So next in the book, they talk about the product development process. And there's teams of people like engineering and manufacturing people, marketing, finance, work together to determine the feasibility of the product or service. So there's a whole process when you're building products that you have to identify to be able to take something, as I mentioned, from concept into something that's feasible and tangible that you're delivering. And often there's a lot of investment made for companies to be able to set up a manufacturing facility to build things like an iPhone. In the past, most companies in the past started their manufacturing and pretty much continued on manufacturing here in the States. Over the years, a lot of this manufacturing has gone offshore, and companies that they call contract manufacturers actually produce for many different companies. They have these volume production lines, and they've invested heavily in capital equipment because starting up a manufacturing company is very capital intensive. It takes a lot of dollars, a lot of expertise in things. And companies said, my core competency is not just in manufacturing, it's product design, development, and delivering to the marketplace. So they're saying, hey, I think I'm going to subcontract, or I'm going to contract out my manufacturing piece. And that's a little bit about what they do. And there's a whole section, as I mentioned, if you get into operations management class, you'll talk a lot about process flow and how you set up a manufacturing facility and all the different things that occur. Well, that pretty much concludes Chapter 7. In Chapter 8, we move into operations management. And I consider operations pretty much the lifeblood of the organization. It's pretty much the whole back end of all the things that happen to get something out to the general marketplace. And whether it's designing a manufacturing process, whether it's designing a service process like a restaurant, like a Chipotle or something, the process of how you make your product and how you procure it and working with the purchasing people and things like that. So all the stuff from input, from raw material to a finished good product is kind of where the operations people reside. And the textbook defines operations as consisting of all the activities transforming an idea into a finished product. And that's pretty much what it is. We talk about inputs. You take imports and you convert it to outputs, which is something, in this case, tangible. The main responsibilities are the planning process. So figuring out, how you're going to produce your products and how the layouts are going to look, what the layouts are going to look like, and things like that. Doing all the studies, controlling the product through the factory. All the raw materials. Moving it from point A to point B, bringing it in, shipping it out to the end user customers, the channels of distribution, working through them, quality control, setting up the metrics of what's considered a good product and how do you measure all that as you're going down a production line. You build an iPhone. At the end of the line, when you put your power button on, is it doing all the things it's supposed to be doing and ensuring that kind of a thing. So there's a lot more detail. I'm just skimming the surface on some of the things that the operations folks get involved with, but there's a whole bunch of things that basically are under the control of the operations people. Because you need the control of all the operations, set up schedules and things like that. There's a number of scheduling techniques. So in the book here, and you don't need to get too involved with this, but there's some tools that you use when you're setting up a process or you're working on a particular project, and it's called the PERT and Gantt charts. And it's just the means of which if you're in a particular project, like if you're going to market with a product, all the different aspects of things that have to come together to be able to hit an end date. And everything, time to market is very critical. So they have these charts that look at all the responsibilities of everybody and how each one interacts with one another and what can be done versus something else. And so there's a complexity there of all the different things in the project, but there are tools here, like I mentioned, that you can just briefly read over those. Basically, that's it. The next section of the chapter talks about, gets a little bit more into the service end of it. I talked more about the manufacturing of a tangible product. But years ago, as I mentioned, it was all manufacturing of tangible products. So a lot of stuff got made here. And in the 80s, 1980s and on, a lot of it got moved to other places like offshore and places like that. But, the primary functions of both, whether it's a manufacturing of a tangible product or a service industry, whatever, but the goal is always to meet customer needs, develop how do you achieve high levels of customer expectations, customer satisfaction. And so we talk a little bit about expanding operations. So business service sector must take a number of decisions. We talked about that, how they provide services, where will they locate businesses. So if you're like a Chipotle or one of these fast food places, you want to be convenient, you want to be fast, but you also want to be able to do things correctly. And so you want to do things consistently. So you got processes that you set up to be able to achieve some of this in what you do. You want to get the material, you want to get the food, in this case the food, the raw materials that make up something, a sandwich, a salad, or whatever you're making, and making sure that it doesn't have anything, any diseases with it or bacteria with it, like the things that Chipotle had in the past. And so we get into a little bit, companies must deliver goods and services to satisfy customers. We talked about that a little bit more. And it wraps up a little bit on the quality management side. And I mentioned that if you take an operations management class, or in fact, I think there's classes that just teach quality, that total quality management's a key piece of what goes into producing a product. And ultimately, it's all the different ingredients, so that when you're building something like an iPhone and you're building all the different pieces of it that go together to an end product, is that all along the way you have some sort of a roadmap of what you're following to make sure that all those little pieces that go together, it's all going to function in the end. And whether you're building a product that's, the process is good and that it's going to deliver that, so that at the end of it, when you put the button on there and turn the phone on, that's going to function all the way it's supposed to function. So there's different ways of different techniques in quality control, like statistical process control, things like that, which I won't get into details at this point, but a lot of those different techniques are out there today that ensure, once again, that customer expectations will be met at the highest standards in the marketplace. So this pretty much was a quick wrap-up of Chapter 7 and 8. And just as we close the week, again, you should have a better understanding of FSBAN product design and development. Again, I just touched the surface here. The book talks a little bit more detail, what defines a target market, and ultimately delivering products that meet the market needs. So you can identify, where these products will be sold. We talked about operations management and the role they play in orchestrating the back-end functions. And when I say back-end functions, a lot of times operations doesn't really meet face-to-face with customers, although they do, certain people do at times, but most of the time it's more of what they're getting all the back end together, so that at the end of it, when you're walking in or you're buying something, that sales and marketing are generally the ones that interface more on the customer side. And so we concluded with quality and some of the tools that they use to measure big project, things like that. So a couple of good chapters. Certainly, I'm expecting people will be reading and asking questions as things come up. So a few reminders as we wrap up the week here. Purchase a midterm case. If you got any problems doing that, just let me know. Read chapters 5 and 10 for next week. Post to the weekly discussion forums. These are good. A lot of you are doing a great job. I see a lot of interaction among the different students. I think it's really good, because unfortunately we're not together here face to face in the classroom. So this is the best we can do online. And certainly complete your assignments, which you got to do, and then post any feedback. Some of you are using the weekly student feedback forum. I think that's great, and I want to encourage that all the way. So anyway, have a good week. Good luck with the midterm. If there's any questions or things that come up along the way, feel free to reach out to me. I'm generally pretty much available, and I try to respond pretty quickly with everyone. So thanks again for listening, and we'll see you during the week.